But I want to put a twist on that phrase this morning. And I want to talk about not the reason for the season, but the reason in the season. That is not a typographical error. The title of the message is intentional. The reason in the season. Of course, the season is about Jesus Christ being born in Bethlehem. That God, and this is the doctrine of the incarnation that we as Christians hold, that God became a man. That God became flesh, as Bruce just read from John chapter 1 a few minutes ago. And he dwelt among us. That God was born in Bethlehem. That he did not cease to become God, but added humanity to his deity. He became a man in Bethlehem. Now, my question is that reasonable for you to believe that? Do reasonable people actually believe that? And is it more reasonable to deny that? Because there is a growing chorus in our culture that it is in fact unreasonable to believe the Christmas story. There are a number of ways that we can go on this, but in your bulletin, for instance, I've given you this quote from a billboard that it was placed by the American Atheists. It's right at the entrance to the Lincoln Tunnel in New York. So every day New Yorkers go by this, and on the billboard there's a picture of the three wise men on their camels, and then you've got the barn where the manger is, and Joseph and Mary, and the shepherds are there. It's a typical manger scene, a nativity scene. And then the caption for that billboard with the typical scene of nativity is this: you know it's a myth. This season, celebrate reason. And so I want to take them up on that. I want to celebrate reason this morning. The reason in the season, and ask, is the incarnation actually reasonable? If you go to the group that put out that billboard has a website, and if you go to their website, you can find a little bit more elucidation as far as what they believe about these things. And on the website, it says, for instance, Christianity stole Christmas. Christians don't own this holiday, never did. Christianity is neither the first, nor the fifth, nor the 10th mythology to adopt the winter solstice as their major day. Mithra, Baal, Krishna, Horus, and even the Mayan gods were all born on the winter solstice. Now, the winter solstice, you know, the December 21st for us. In the old Roman calendar is December 25th. And so it marks the beginning of the sun returning. And, you know, during the fall and winter months, you notice the days get shorter and shorter. There's less and less light. It's cold. It's dark. People get more depressed. And then because the sun it seems to be retreating, days are shorter. But then the winter solstice marks the turning point when the sun starts to come back and the days start getting longer and longer. So we can expect this after Christmas. This is always a good thing, especially those of you who are prone to seasonal affective disorder. And you need some sunlight to stay a little less depressed, although it probably wouldn't be a good idea to live in Ireland if you had those tendencies. So, indeed, this is what it goes on to say: none of the trappings of Christmas are Christian. All of it predates Christianity. Yuletide, Yule logs come from the pagan holiday of Yule. The pagans also took the solstice for their own. Santa Claus is Nordic, Germanic, or Celtic, depending on whom you ask. And there are no tinsel-covered evergreens in Bethlehem. That's pagan too. Christians don't deserve a monopoly on holiday cheer. We own a piece of the solstice, whatever you want to call it. So the other thing you can do, if you're an atheist, you can go online and you can download the Atheist Coloring Book. And the Atheist Christmas Coloring Book is for you to help indoctrinate your children in the area of atheism. And it's got a stocking on the front, and you can give your kids colors and crayons, and then it's got a poem. So I'll read the poem to you along with the pictures. I won't show you all the pictures. And here's the way the poem goes. This kind of it kind of captures where atheists are coming from on this. On the darkest, longest night of the year, We gather to share joy, gifts, and cheer. It is a custom as old as a custom can be, even for atheists like you and me. Winter solstice is due to Earth's axial tilt, mapped by ancients in the temples they built. The Jews deserve credit for evergreen leaves, the Norse the Yule log, and pagans the wreath. In 300 AD, the Pope added Jesus, while on Roman Saturnalia one did as he pleases. Over 3,000 years, things were added and changed. North Pole, flying deer, elves quite deranged. The Christians made Christmas via holiday hack. Let's keep all the good stuff and give Jesus back. Clever George Washington crossed the Delaware while the Hessians were drunk on Yule grog and prayer. Look past the myths and absurd superstitions. Start your own atheist Christmas traditions. This season is about love and joy for mankind and enjoying the bounty you've earned with your mind. That's from the Atheist Christmas Coloring Book. So, the contention would be that this is not a reasonable thing to believe. One of the more famous atheists, of course, if you believe this is true and there is no reason for the season and that Christians just kind of stole Christmas and made it their own, and if that is the case, then you die, according to the atheists, and that's it. Your body becomes food for the worms and you cease to exist. Which means that life ultimately is absurd. It's meaningless. There is no ultimate purpose. For instance, especially in your pain, there is no purpose. There's no meaning. There's no God out there who's working and causing all these things to work for your ultimate good somehow. That makes sense, especially after we die. One of the more famous atheists is Christopher Hitchens, we've mentioned many times before. Christopher Hitchens was diagnosed this past summer with esophageal cancer. He is dying. There's not much more they can do for him. One of the more brilliant minds of our generation. He's a clever writer. I love to read his writing. He's actually very good. But he is a very strident atheist. He was interviewed recently about dying, and he tried to explain from an atheist's point of view in these words. I'm here as a product of the process of evolution, which doesn't make very many exceptions and which rates life relatively cheaply. So to be relatively healthy at 62 is to be dealt a pretty good hand by the cosmos, which doesn't know I'm here and won't notice when I'm gone. That's life for an atheist. You're just here for a little while. Nobody really notices that very much. And then you'll be gone, and no one's going to notice that, and you'll be replaced. And there is no meaning. There is no ultimate purpose. Now, Christopher Hitchens has a brother. His name is Peter. Peter Hitchens was also an atheist. They grew up in a Church of England home in the United Kingdom, and they heard all these things, and they both decided they weren't going to be Christians. They were going to become atheists, and they both went into journalism. And Christopher Hitchens, of course, went his route, which you know very well. And Peter Hitchens became a journalist, especially in Eastern Europe and in the Soviet Union, former Soviet Union. And the longer he lived in these communist and atheistic nations, the more he came to realize that atheism is not the answer. And he actually came back to Christianity. He came back to Christ. And he wrote a book recently called The Rage Against God, How Atheism Led Me to Faith, which is an interesting title, isn't it? And this is how he came to reject Christianity. I knew all the standard arguments, and who doesn't, about how Christianity had stolen its myths and feast days from pagan faiths and was in a long line of fairy stories about gods who die and rise again. Since all the great faiths disagreed, they couldn't be all right. Jesus was curiously similar to Mithras, or was it Horus, etc., 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 easy as pie, not in the sky, and made still more facile by the way such youthful epiphanies are applauded by many teachers and other influential adults, and endorsed by the general culture of my country, which is the United Kingdom, which views God as a nuisance and religion as an embarrassment or worse. And then he writes the rest of the book, telling you how he came back to faith.